In the month of July, I read 12 books. I had a big assortment of different genres that I read. I feel like this is my most diversified month, and I really enjoyed a lot of the books that I read. I continued on in the series I was reading. I had a 5 star, which I haven't had a lot of this year, but let's just go ahead and get into the 12 books that I read this month. Starting with City of Lost Souls, which is the fifth book in the Immortal Instruments series. This just continued off for the fourth book, and I really loved where this book went. This followed another character that you weren't really expecting to pop back up and took a different direction than I was expecting. I loved a lot of the things that we dealt with in this book, and just the way that you could see a lot of the characters' connections were coming through in this and were very important and vital to being able to help out other people when things were going on in the story. I obviously have to be very vague because this is the fifth book in a series, but I love this. I feel like it's so good. It's very reminiscent of like 2010s dystopian, that feeling you get when you read Hunger Games, and I just feel like this is amazing, and it's been my favorite series that I've read this far this year. And I always say this, I absolutely love Cassandra Clare's writing, and I'm just so excited that I got to start out the month with this book. Then I picked up Tempting Venom by Rena Kent, which is the third book in the Viper series. And let me just say, I know a lot of people did not love this book. I am not one of those people. I love this. I thought it was so heartbreaking and sweet at the same time. Preston is one of my favorite Rena Kent men that I have read. I think that he's hilarious. I think that he is very vulnerable. I think that he struggles a lot, and I feel like he definitely uses sarcasm and like dark humor as a way to deal with a lot of the trauma that he has. And I just think that he really is somebody that struggles a lot and is working to work through these things that he's dealing with. And then Marcus, getting to see him interact with Preston and just how obsessed he was with him, I thought that that was so funny. There are a lot of moments throughout this book when Marcus would just say a lot of unhinged things, and Preston would look at him and say, like, dude, what are you even talking about? Why are you talking to me like that? And he's like, wait, do I like this? And he's like, no, but like, of course he liked it. And then the ending of this book, like the last 10 to 20%, even though I knew what was going to happen because I read Sweet Venom, it didn't make it any easier. I was struggling, I was crying, especially when Preston was talking about a lot of the things that he dealt with in his childhood and just how much that really was shaping him and still affecting him to this day. And I just feel like Rena Kent does such a good job depicting mental health as well as talking about it and really what that does to somebody and how it affects everybody differently. And I just thought that this was a great conclusion to the series. I will also say I've seen a lot of people talk about the fact that Preston gives Dahlia so many different names that start with a D, and it's for petty reasons. And he had so many good names in there, like DoorDash and Dropbox and Dakota, and just names that were just making me laugh out loud, that just really helped with like the other parts of this book that were kind of hard to digest. But again, I thought that this was a great conclusion to the series. And then I read Thornbird by Elle Kennedy, and let me just say, for this being her first mystery slash like thriller book that she's written, I feel like she did an absolutely amazing job. This book was so addictive, fast paced, bingeable, really hooked me from the get-go, and I just thought it was amazing. This is basically about a girl whose dad is a famous serial killer from where she used to live, and she essentially has to end up moving back to this town. And in this town, all they really ever talk about is the fact that this man killed all these people and what this has done to this town and how it has just left this huge like cloud over them and how much it consumes really their day-to-day life. And it's just so interesting that that is something that still resonates with them 10 years later. And so when she comes back, she's basically going by an alias name. She's living with her mom's sister's family. Yeah. And these people in the town still somewhat think that this family had something to do with it, and just have always been very wary of them, and then have kind of started learning to accept them. And so when she starts at the school, she's hearing all these murmurings about her dad and what people think about him and all the things that he really put this town through. And she gets close to this guy, and she's like, oh, I really like him, but I need to stay away from him. I need to not form this connection. And then, you know, she's really just trying to work through her senior year and trying to basically stay under the radar and not give anybody any reason to look into her. Like I said, again, I felt like this was such a good mystery book. At points, my jaw was on the floor, my heart was racing. I was like flipping the page so fast. I genuinely could not put it down, and I just again think she did such a good job, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And then we have The Winged Game. I was seeing this long before this book came out. People that got ARCs were talking about how excited they were for this book, and they felt like this would be the next big romantasy. And I will say, while it might not be the next big romantasy, I feel like this was a very good book. It was so enjoyable. It's a standalone, and what is unique about this is that it's a romantasy, but it's sports based. And I've never read a romantasy that centers around sports, and I love reading about books where the characters are in a sport, and I thought it was so much fun. It's a made of sport in this world, and it's almost like Quidditch from Harry Potter, if you've ever seen that, which I feel like everybody has, but it's that, but it's made up in this world. So then you have the characters in this world that are Tessa and Keon, and you essentially start out the story where her name's Tessa, sorry. Tessa is in this game with these people, and whenever she is playing this, she basically gets accused of cheating, and this deters her life for 2 years. She gets kicked out of the league. Everybody thinks that she's a horrible person. They talk crap about her, all these things. And Keon one day comes to her door and basically says like, hey, my team is really, really struggling, and I need you to come back and be our star player and help us get back to where we were. We are not doing the way we should be. We're underperforming. I don't understand. Like, I need your help. And the twist on that is that these two are rivals. They cannot stand each other. She absolutely does not like him. She cannot stand him, and just really thinks that this guy thinks that he's full of himself and that he's the best player in the league and like he can do no wrong. And so you basically just go throughout the story where they are working together to try to get this team back to the status that they used to be, and they are trying to work on being friends and like have a good relationship and present to the public that, you know, we are a cohesive unit, and they're really not. But that's what was going on, and I really loved it. And then also this had fake dating in it, which I love. That's another one of my favorite tropes. And so having all of these elements within a fantasy when that has not been done before, and I haven't read it, and it's my favorite thing. So the sports and the fake dating just made it so much fun, and I loved their banter in this book. I felt like getting to see the two of them really work through their issues and like the reasoning that they were having all these problems with each other, like what was the root cause for you not getting along, and then watching them work through those issues and then subsequently having a relationship was really good. I love the author's writing. I feel like it's so easy to digest and to get into the world, and I love seeing like the animals that they would ride. I thought that that was so much fun, and just the way that she made up this whole sport. And once you like are able to figure it out and understand it and follow along, it really is a lot of fun. I think it's so good, and I really loved it. And then this is the Ariel version of this book, and I'm so glad that I got it because I feel like it is so gorgeous, and it really does depict what happens in the story. And then I finally picked up House of Sky and Breath. When I say this has been a long time coming, I'm not kidding. I read House of Earth and Blood last June and said to myself, you know, I'm going to stay on the grind. I'm going to keep reading the Sarah J. Maas books. Like, I'm going to not take a whole year in between. Well and behold, it takes me an entire year to pick up this book. And honestly, I'm not really mad because I feel like that's going to be fresh in my brain with the new book coming out in October. And I listened to this, which is how I listened to her series for Crescent City, and I highly recommend it. I feel like the narrator, especially the full cast one of the graphic audio, is just so good, and it just really puts you in this world and helps you follow along in the story, especially if you're like struggling with like the information that they're talking about or the pacing of it or anything like that. But I really love this. This was kind of slow to start out, and you kind of start with a character where you're like, why are we following them? What is the purpose of this? And you quickly find out why we are learning things about her and what her purpose is going to be in this book. I know that a lot of people actually don't like this book, and that they, one, say it's slow, two, say that it's not their favorite, but I actually really did. I think the audiobook helped out a lot. I think it was really great, and just following along with what was going on with Bryson Hunt was fun, and having other POVs in here and just getting a little bit more of the lay of the land from other people that are in like different areas of the world, and you know, like what they deal with and how they view society, I think was really fun. And then just going throughout, like genuinely, I think it was good. The ending of this book, I so wish I had my reaction, because when I tell you that I freaked out and I was just like running around and my jaw was on the floor, holy crap. So if you have been putting off reading the second book, the third book in Crescent City, and or first, any of them, and you don't think you need to read it, I'll tell you, you need to read it before ACOTAR 6. Don't put it off. I promise you, it's worth it. And then I reread The Unhoneymooners, and I gave this book 5 stars years ago when I read it. I really loved it. I thought it was great. Upon the reread, there were some issues. I thought it was just okay. There was a lot of like miscommunication, um, basically just forming these conclusions that are not right, and really leaning on something that I don't love that authors use as like a device. So basically, this falls Olive, and her sister is getting married, and at this wedding party, everybody except for her and the best man gets sick. So they ultimately obviously have a honeymoon, and these two have to go on this honeymoon. But Olive is really upset because the best man, Ethan, is somebody that she doesn't get along with. She really doesn't like him. She thinks that, he thinks all these different things about her, whether that's she's pretentious or she looks a certain way or he looks down on her, and she just has all these misconstrued views about him. But they go on this honeymoon, and basically she learns Ethan is nothing like this. I might have gotten the wrong idea. He seems like a genuinely good guy. And they start like forming a friendship and subsequently a relationship. And so for me, what I really didn't like was how self-deprecating she was, how she used the fact that she was a little bit of a bigger size to basically play off a lot of issues that were going on in the story, such as the reason he didn't like her, such as the reason that certain people would look at her or judge things that she ate. And I'm like, while that can be things that happen, I really think that your issues with that were being projected onto other people, and that was not what was going on at all. So it's interesting reading a book that I read years ago and then reading it now and seeing how vastly different my opinion on the story is, and really how the fact that reading a book at a certain time really does change your opinion on it. But I will say the backdrop of this book, elite, so great. Like the summer vibes were amazing. The fact that this was in Hawaii, I could just feel like I was on the beach watching this all go down, and it was so great. I thought that that was really good. And then I really did like Ethan. I thought that he was a great main male character. I feel like he really tried to help Olive with a lot of these insecurities that she had, and was trying to be understanding of where she was coming from and why she was having these issues. And then he just, again, I liked him. I thought that he was a good person, and like I said, I really liked the backdrop of this book. And then I picked up what was arguably the biggest book of last summer, which was One Golden Summer by Carley Fortune. This was my first Carley Fortune book, and I will say, I don't know what it is. I never had an interest in ever picking up her books. It was nothing against her. It was nothing against like the stories that she was telling or anything. I just never gravitated towards her. And then I watched Every Summer After, or Every Year After. Didn't really like it, but I felt like, if I'm ever going to pick up One Golden Summer, I want to at least understand why I need to read Every Summer After, or understand what happens in that book to read this book, and to have an understanding of like who Charlie is as a character. And I feel like that is necessary. So I read this book. I loved it. I thought it was great. I loved her writing. I love these characters and their relationship and the development of it. This follows Alice and Charlie, and basically Alice is working in a job where she does photography, and she really is working to basically get out of this rut that she's in. She feels like she's taking photos and they're not resonating with her or speaking to who she is as a photographer or what she wants to put out into the world. She really feels like she's taking photos that are going to benefit other people and are basically being projected the way that they want it to look, and she is just trying to figure out a way to get out of that. So this comes in the form of her grandma breaking her hip, and when this happens, her grandma is in a huge rut and she's really upset, and Alice decides that, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take a little mini sabbatical from photography. I'm going to take my grandma down to the lake house that we used to go to every summer, and we're just going to basically work through our issues and just have a good time and relax and get away from the world and just have a good time. And so when they get there, she basically has received this message from this guy Charlie saying that, I'll help you out this summer. If there's any repairs on the lake house that you need, like, let me know. I'm your guy. I'll do whatever you need. Like, don't hesitate to ask. And she is very hesitant about this. She's like, why is this guy approaching me about this? This is very weird. Why is he so like flirty? I'm not looking for anything from anybody. And basically, as this is going along, she comes to find out that Charlie is this person that she had taken a photo of years ago, so this boat that's on the cover, and that she basically has kind of admired him from afar for years and has really just like wanted to live the type of summer that him and his brother and his best friend lived years ago. And basically that's what happened. She goes on this bucket list with Charlie and is basically trying to live a summer that she would have lived when she was 17, and just trying to have like that youthfulness brought back into her life. And so I will say I love that. I don't know what it is about me. I'm not really a bucket list person, but their bucket list, or rather Alice's bucket list, I thought was so cute. I love that she was really trying to recapture her youth and just basically take a step back and breathe and tell herself like, hey, it doesn't matter that I'm in my 30s and I feel like I've hit a rough patch. I can still come out on the other side and be okay. Like, this is not going to deter me. I'm a good person. Like, I'm working hard and I can find my love for photography again, which she does, and I really love that. And then seeing Charlie and just what he was like in the show and what I've heard about him to how he was in this book, genuinely, he is such a great guy. I feel like he was so hard on himself and was just very much like leaning into who he was in the past and thinking that that's the only version of himself he could be. And Alice really was the person to tell him, hey, like, you are not this person. You are not your past self. You do not need to beat yourself up about things that you did. Like, it's okay. You are a great person. Like, this person that I've seen is genuine and caring and kind and would give you the shirt off of his back and just does everything he can to genuinely make you feel good about yourself. And that's what I see. And I loved seeing Charlie through that lens and how Alice viewed him. And then I just also really loved Charlie's relationship with Alice's grandma. I thought it was so adorable. Like, it was kind of like a kindred soul. I feel like they got along so well, and just the way that they were able to divulge like things to each other and just talk about things that were going on and really just have a good time. I felt like that is exactly what both Alice and her grandma needed, and I really love this book. I feel like I'm definitely going to pick up more by Carly Fortune. And then I picked up All the Missing Pieces by Catherine Cowles, which is technically my first book by her, but not really. I read a novella by her before, but I picked up this book because it was a book that was on my radar, and it has been for a while. And this is basically about this podcaster who is going over these like missing cases and just essentially talking about them. Like, she's I wouldn't say a true crime junkie. She likes talking about true crime and bringing awareness to crimes that have been committed and just putting it out in the world. And basically the reason that she is a podcaster is because her twin sister goes missing in college and she's never found. And basically she is trying to help other people that have been through a similar thing as her and find closure and find, you know, any type of relief, I guess, that they can get from this situation that's obviously very tragic and horrible. And she is just trying to give that to other people when she feels like she didn't get that. But she basically starts over in this town, and in this town she is going there because there are these like weird things that are going on, and she's basically following these leads around a serial killer where she thinks that the first person that was targeted is the first victim of this person, and that they have subsequently committed all these other crimes, but nobody else has put it together. She is basically going to say, like, how can I get adjusted to this town, in with them, and like figure out information that they know, figure out if they have any idea of like, is this girl aware of you potentially being involved in something bigger than you ever thought. And a lot of these people in the small town do not like outsiders. They don't love people asking questions, and they're very protective of this girl that had a horrific thing happen to her. And then you of course have a grumpy sheriff who, they get off on the wrong foot. He is just so against her. He really doesn't like her. He feels like she is there for the wrong reasons. He quickly finds out that obviously he's wrong, and basically you go through the story just seeing that the two of these people were butting heads in the beginning, but were able to come together and work together to work this case. And then seeing that this girl really does have a love for giving people closure and basically trying to help them find out like the things that happened to them or their family, and basically just working through and just be like, hey, I've been through this, I understand, and I'm not somebody that's going to be a vulture or try to, you know, take things from you or try to twist your words or make you say anything you don't want to, or even talk to me if you don't want to. And I really love that. I actually gave this book a 5 stars, and I wasn't fully expecting that. Like, I felt like I was going to, but when I got to the end, I was like, no, when I say that this is bingeable, I was hooked. I love the true crime elements. I love that she was a podcaster. I love that there's the element that her sister had went missing, so she very much had a stake in any type of podcast that she was putting out about anybody's family member that went missing, and she was very delicate with like dealing with anything that they had went through. I just thought that it was so amazing, and I definitely want to read more books by Catherine Cowles. And then for whatever reason I was feeling a thriller. I'm not a thriller girly, but I'd seen this book called That's Not My Name, and I just heard really good things about it. This is a YA thriller, and basically the way that this book starts out is this girl wakes up in a ditch. She doesn't know her name. She doesn't know what's going on. She stands up and she's trying to figure out, like, where am I? What happened? Who am I? And I need to get help. And so she's running and she runs into this cop, and this cop like asks her, is she okay, or is she doing something weird? And she's like, no. And he takes her back to the police station, and when he does, he asks her, like, who are you? And she said, I have no idea. I don't know who I am. I don't know what age I am. I don't know where I'm from. Like, basically all her memories are wiped. He's talking to her. He's talking to her. And all of a sudden this man walks in and like says her name and looks at her and he goes, that's my daughter. And she's like, I'm his daughter? And he starts spouting off all these things about her, the way she looks, what age she is, her name. And then to her, she goes, oh, this is my name. This has to be my dad. So you're following this one timeline, and then you follow another timeline where this boy basically is being accused of killing his girlfriend, and he has said, like, I have nothing to do with this. I didn't do anything. Everybody in town has turned against him. He was a swimmer, I believe, and everybody that was on his team, like, it's not his friend anymore. He's just basically been outcasted. And so he is basically trying to prove that I didn't kill my girlfriend. I don't know what happened to her. Let me show you that, like, I'm not who you think I am, and I'm going to prove this. So you're following along these two timelines, and I thought that that was really interesting because the entire time you're trying to figure out, like, is this girl maybe his girlfriend, or, like, who is this girl? What is going on? Why are you telling me these two stories? How do they meet? Like, what is the point, I guess, really of the story? And I would just say this is another one where it was so fast paced. I was just really trying to the entire time figure out like what was going on. I was trying not to get roped into one story and just believe it and follow it and just say like this is it. And I feel like I was able to pretty quickly figure out like what was going on. I did, not necessarily believe a lot of the things that were being told to me, which I feel like you're not supposed to in a thriller. And then I feel like at the end it was pretty crazy. I would be like, yeah, I kind of did expect it and didn't, but I loved it. I thought it was really good. I thought her writing was really quick and just like got you into the story starting from the beginning to end. Like, I was never once bored. I never wanted to put it down. I really was like, I want to figure out what is going on and who this girl is, and if she is this girl, like, great. If she's not, like, what is actually happening. So great thriller. I would definitely read more by her, and I really want to try to get more into thrillers. I just feel like I don't know why I can't find good ones that necessarily stick with me outside of maybe this one and The Housemaid. I just want to find more that are going to be like that. And then I finally picked up the last book in the Legacy of God series, God of War. I cannot believe, first of all, that I'm done with the series. I've been reading the series for almost an entire year now, which is so crazy to say because it all started with God and Mouse on a random day in August, and I could not have known what this series was going to mean to me, what these characters would mean, the way that this would start a whole dark romance journey for me, the way that Rena Kent would become one of my favorite dark romance authors, and just, yeah, and it was great. And I will say, honestly, this book, I had already heard a lot of conjecture about it before I started. So I went in with a grain of salt, not trying to expect a lot. And I knew that there would be amnesia in this. And I was very curious how Rena was going to handle this in the story. And honestly, it's not the way I expected. I thought it was a very different way to handle it. And I kind of liked it. I really liked the very beginning of the story, maybe like the first 20 or 30%. I was hooked. Like, I was like, Ava is a badass. She is throughout this entire story. Nothing about that changes. And really, I was like, why is she only suppressing certain memories about Eli, the main male character? I want to understand, like, where this is coming from, because you're only viewing him in the context of, I hate him, he's a horrible person, I used to have a crush on him, I'm like, now I don't. And then they're married, and you're like, well, if you got married, there's a reason. Like, I don't feel like you just decided, hey, I'm going to get married to this guy just because. And she obviously can't remember, like, being married to him, why she is, how this happened, why would she ever agree to it. She's basically stuck like 2 years in the past and is trying to understand. And so as you're going throughout this book, you're learning alongside Ava, like, what happened, how did they even come to the point of being married, like, why is she not remembering things, and kind of like reliving what the past few years would have been like for her. And I will say, honestly, Ava as a character, first of all, I really loved her. I thought she was a great female main character. She, again, is such a badass, and honestly is a trooper. The amount of things that she was dealing with internally and was struggling with, and the, like, mental health issues that she was dealing with, and not knowing that throughout the other books really made me look at her in a different light, because I never disliked her, I never hated her, but I did not know she was struggling nearly as much as she was. And being in her head and truly seeing how much she was working to mask this part of herself and really just try to seem like the happy, bubbly, go lucky, pink shrouded girl that she was, and that's not really who she was at her core. It was just really interesting to be in her perspective and just see really what she was going through. And I've said this before, I love that about all of Rena's books, is that even though a lot of times they follow the same storyline except for this last one, being in everybody else's head and seeing what they're really struggling with and how they view other people and how they view other situations is really good to see, because you can see a lot of the times what people think about them isn't necessarily true, or the way that they view other people might not be what it is at face value. And again, I just really loved Ava. I thought she was a great female character. Eli, he was okay. I didn't like really dislike him. He's not like the bottom for me for Rena Kentman, but I didn't necessarily love their dynamic or their relationship, but that's nothing against them. But like I said, Ava, loved her, and I loved getting to read her story and just learning more about her. And then finally, I ended the month with one of my favorite books from last year, which was Nightshade. Last year I gave this a 5-star. This was one of my favorite books that I read, and I thought about it all the time, and I knew I had to do a reread before Daybreak came out, which I did. And let me just say, this was just as good as the first time. I absolutely loved it. I thought that this is just such a good story about two characters that really get off on the wrong foot and have preconceived notions, and just the way that they have been shaped and the trauma and like mental illness that they're dealing with really affects them. And again, I just loved it, and being able to now pick out things that I remember from the first time and seeing it and being like, oh my gosh, she foreshadowed this so well, or oh my gosh, you were telling me this from the beginning and I just was not paying attention, was cool. And then realizing that a lot of things that I thought happened earlier on in the story actually didn't was really interesting, such as like when these two started having a relationship and started developing those like interactions was really cool. But if you haven't read this, this is about Ophelia and Alex. And Ophelia basically is a new student at Sorrow Song University. And when she's walking up to school, she stops in the middle and this person almost hits her. And she moves out of the way, and this person in the car says like, hey, what are you doing? Are you trying to get killed? And she's like, no, I don't know. And he's like, can tell something is going on with her. And as they're talking, they're going back and forth. He's like, hey, I can give you a ride into the school. Like, this is kind of weird. You're just standing out here. And they're just making like these back and forth jokes. And they get there when he parks in the parking spot. She's like, man, this guy is not, you know, the head of the school. Why is he parking here? And then he asks what her name is. She gives it, but she doesn't ask for his name. So she goes in, and basically she's going through school and trying to like figure out something that happened to her parents. Her parents basically died in a car crash 4 years earlier, and she is just trying to figure out how these people from this aviation company called Green Aviation basically targeted her parents, and like what was the point of this? Why were they in any way involved? Like, her parents were good people. She can't understand like what they would be doing with people that just work at this university. And then she basically knows that there is this guy that goes to the university. His name is Alex Corbo Green, and she's like, I know that his dad is the owner of this company. And lo and behold, the guy that she met in the car is Alex Corbo Green. And when she finds out, she's like, I can't stand him, I don't like him. And he is just like smitten with her from the get-go, and I love it. And just again, reading this again and seeing my underlines and catching on to things that I didn't the first time was so much fun. And I just loved it, like I said, as much as the first time, and was able to binge it again. Like, Autumn really has a way of telling a story and just having you be so invested in what both of these characters are really going through, and really trying to peel back the layers of like what's going on, why are they both struggling, like why is this affecting you the way that it is. And that goes for Alex as well. Like, it's not just Ophelia that's struggling and that is upset with the way Green Aviation is handled and the way that they handle things that are going on with their like helicopters and stuff. And I just thought it was good. And then when I finished this, it was right before Daybreak came out, and oh my gosh, this was great. Like, I don't know what I expected. This picked up right at the end of the last book, and just going in and having more perspective from Alex and just seeing what he's been doing since him and Ophelia last saw each other was really cool. I mean, like, it was so interesting watching him in a different environment and watching the way that he was handling his new responsibility and what it was like for him and his family. And I was just like, man, I really feel for you. I like you, but at the same time, like, I need you to be there for my girl. Like, I love her and she's also struggling. And I'm just like, you know who this is as a person now and what had happened in the story. I was just like, I don't know how you genuinely think she would ever do anything to hurt you or your family. And then just watching the two of them work through that and come back to being on good terms, and watching her have this relationship with his family and just what they were doing, it was so bittersweet. Like, I love this so much. When I was getting to the last 50 pages, I could just tell I was going to start crying, and not because it was sad, but because it was bittersweet. It was so good, and I just knew, I was like, I'm going to miss these characters. I'm never going to get to read about them for the first time again. I'm never going to get to see their relationship for the first time again. Like, this is the last time I'm reading it. And then, like, genuinely at the end, there was something that actually did make me cry. And again, it was in happiness, and I just love this. It was so great. I feel like this is one of the best, like, duets, duologies, whatever you want to call it, that I've read. I feel like Autumn just has such a good way of writing about characters, and again, just really giving you so much to them and giving them a lot of depth and, like, things that they're dealing with and the way that they interact with people, I thought was so great. And I just loved it, and I'm like, I cannot wait to see what else she's going to do. I just know it's going to be great, and I'm so looking forward to it. So those were all the books that I read in June, in July. Oh my gosh, this month has just flown by, and this summer has flown by. I didn't even know what month it was. But if you stayed to the end, I really appreciate you watching. I hope you had a great reading month as well. If you had a favorite book, I would love to know what yours was. I think that my favorite book was probably Nightshade, but if I'm not picking one that I'd already read, maybe like House of Sky and Breath or Tempting Venom. Those were both really good. And again, I just had a really great reading month, and I can't wait to see what the rest of the year has to bring.